Grew up here, and I have for the last, number of years kind of building off of all the great work that a lot of just local historians have done before me, kind of just been working to try to catalog initially old homes, and I think that's what I'm most interested is some of the old homes throughout the ag reserve. But also just, interesting landmarks like we'll talk about tonight with White's Ferry, and, other locations. So really great to be here with you all and excited to kind of jump in. I would say, and if there's at the end, I'll take any questions or during the session, if there's questions, feel free and I'll answer them. But at the beginning, uh, every year we do, as part of the Historic Medley District HMD, we've last 3 or 4 years in a row now, we've been doing historic home tours in May. And I'm starting to get a bunch of emails from people asking if we're doing that again this year. And the plan is yes, absolutely to do it again. It's one of my favorite days of the year. Um, so you will be seeing, I'll make sure that I share it with the seniors group to share like the tickets and everything as they come out. I think in the next, I don't know, a couple of weeks they should be coming out. I'm looking at mid-May for the tour. And right now I think what I'm trying to do is just figure out the, the homes that we're going to have on the tour. I've got some new ones that I'm excited about, and then looking to get some ones that have been on it before, and so going through that process. But anyway, just keep your eyes out for those tickets because they always do go fast, which is exciting. And I will try to make sure that we put a lot of tickets for sale this year so that anybody who wants to participate can. Okay, so for tonight. What I wanted to talk about was this is largely if you have the most recent edition of Plenty magazine, which just came out like last week, there's an article in there from me about this topic. And so my thought was tonight I would just kind of like talk through that article, kind of you can hear it from me and see some of the pictures, and I can kind of narrate some of that. And essentially what I was asked back in probably January from a couple of people in the area, to include the publishers of Plenty magazine, was, and I'm going to explain this in a second, but there is a thought that if one was able to prove definitively that the landing of White's Ferry on the Virginia side of the river had not changed since 1871. And again, I'll explain the context for this in a minute. But if that landing site that we know today that is closed, if that had been the same as it was back in 1871, there may potentially be more of a legal argument to have the ferry opened. And so I think, quite honestly, when people reached out to me to look into this issue and to potentially write this story for Plenty Magazine, the thought was like maybe Kenny can find something to prove this. And I was excited to be like, oh, I would be like a literal hero in town. They'd probably make a statue for me if I could prove that and get White's Ferry back open, right? So if I went to try to prove this, but as I kind of suspected, it is not easy. I don't know that it's actually provable that the Virginia landing today is the same as it was in 1871. And so the point of the article really went from kind of look, here's the proof that it's the same, to more of here's the methodology that I use to try to look at that. Welcome experts, historians, archaeologists to dig into it further to see if maybe somebody out there is able to find more definitive evidence than I was able to. So, um, that being said, that's kind of the background of how this story came about. I love this picture. I think this is from the early 1960s. But you can see this is again from that Virginia side looking across to the Maryland side of White's Ferry at that time. So And I'm assuming maybe I should back up a second. I'm assuming everybody on here is aware of, White's Ferry, the crossing sites just kind of west of Poolsville that was kind of I think the last remaining ferry across the Potomac, one of the oldest, if not the oldest operating ferries in the country on a river. Um, Closed down, gosh, it's been I think 5 years ago now. And, it largely the result of a disagreement between the property owners on the Virginia side and the ferry owners based here on the Maryland side. And I don't, I know there's a lot of strong feelings about that and whatever. And, I've got my own opinions, but it's kind of irrelevant to the conversation here. And the point here is the White's Ferry had been in operation since at least the late 1700s. Initially, and you'll see this in the maps I'm about to show you, but when it first opened, it was run by by a man named Conrad Myers in the late 1700s. He presumably lived somewhere down by the water and opened up a ferry. And at that point, we think it was largely just kind of a boat, and he had one of those long kind of oar stick things that he could kind of push through the water. The location of where White's Ferry is located on the river was chosen for a couple of reasons. One, the water was deep enough for kind of boats with weight to traverse, but shallow enough to where somebody with a long pole could kind of pull through the water. And also, the water was relatively calm so that it would make the crossing a bit easier. And, up and down the river in these parts, there are a lot of kind of well-known historic crossing points. If you think about a little bit north of White's Ferry, you've got White's Ford, which was never a ferry, but a very frequently crossed part of the river during the Civil War by units on both sides. And so this section of the Potomac has, for hundreds of years, been traversed based on its depth and its calmness. But so Conrad sets up this ferry in the late 1700s. He was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. We think based on population records that or census records that he had a wife and two kids and at least one enslaved person on his property. Um, and kind of disappears from the records in the early 1800s. It's not completely clear um, kind of where he ended up, but the property and the running of this ferry was kind of passed through a number of different hands through the early 1800s into the mid 1800s. And after the Civil War concluded, um, Elijah White, who is, an individual that we've talked about before in these, but a really kind of interesting individual who grew up in Poolsville, actually grew up in Stony Castle, which is a historic home just outside of Poolsville, really beautiful old stone home. Grew up there, led a cavalry unit in the Civil War for the Confederacy. And after the war, went into business, kind of seemed to be a pretty entrepreneurial person, had a couple of different kind of businesses that he was running. I think he also married into a relatively wealthy family on the other side of the river, took up residence on the other side of the river near Leesburg. And then in the late 1860s, early 1870s, purchased the ferry. At that time, again, it was called Conrad's Ferry after Conrad who'd set it up, but Elijah White renamed it for himself. It became White's Ferry. And the Virginia land, well, both sides of the landing, but Virginia specifically the Virginia landing was held by a private owner. And Elijah wanted access to that ferry landing through this private property. And I think based on the records, Loudoun County commissioners at that time kind of recognized, think about the movement of agricultural goods and livestock and whatnot. And there's a lot of trade between the Maryland and Virginia sides. The commissioners kind of recognize like, hey, it's probably beneficial to both sides of the shore and to the local economies to have this ferry operational. And so in 1871, uh, basically there was a parcel of land that was kind of condemned and made public so that Elijah could use it to build this Virginia landing. And so we've got this court record from 1871 essentially declaring this very, very, very small parcel of land as the Virginia landing. The problem is that the court language is very non-specific, and there is no map, which um, maybe at the time was not that abnormal, but for today, as we think back on that, it would have been really, really convenient if we had a really good map drawn on the Virginia side. And I will show you that what's interesting is actually here on the Maryland side, we do have a bunch of pretty well drawn out maps to show us exactly where the Maryland side landing was. I wish we had the same for Virginia because what ended up happening was the property owners on the Virginia side, you know, kind of a long-standing dispute with the ferry operators, took the ferry operators to court, claiming that they were essentially operating on private property. And long story short, part of the reason why the courts ended up siding with the Virginia property owners, again, part of the reason, there's a lot of complex issues at play here, but part of the big reason was because ferry owners were not able to conclusively prove that that same strip of land that had been made public for the Virginia landing back in 1871 in that court case was the exact same strip of land that it is today. There's been speculation that that Virginia landing side has maybe moved up and down the shore over the 150 some years. Um, I think, I think it's likely that the landing on Virginia side is probably the same as it was, but just saying that I have a good feeling about it or it seems likely is not going to hold up in the court of law, right? And so again, the idea with looking into this and writing this article and other people looking was just like, is there some way to conclusively prove that that landing today is the same as it was? Very hard to do. So this is just to give you a sense of like how specific and precise of a strip of land that we're talking about on this Virginia side. This is the language from that 1871 court case. And essentially, what the court determined was there would be this block of land, one perch by 27 perches, to mark off to take this private property and turn it into this easement for the Virginia landing. And so obviously, like as I read this, I don't speak in perches. I have no idea how much that was, so I had to do some online searching to figure out that one perch is apparently 16 and a half feet, and then that makes 27 perches 445 feet, which I don't know, maybe that sounds like a lot, but that's an incredibly narrow strip of land. And to give you a sense of that, if we look at the overhead here, and this is 2025 overhead imagery, but you can see White's Ferry. So the Maryland landing is on the right side here of the river, and then the Virginia landing is on the left side here. I've just the location of these two red boxes means nothing. I'm just showing you this is kind of the general size on the map of what that strip of land would look like. Um, there is question, like when I read this in my head, I naturally thought or assumed like the strip of land must be kind of like you're seeing this bottom red box that goes from the river straight out. I did have somebody else kind of make a point to me when I was kind of doing some of the research for the article that they actually thought it was not that it was actually maybe horizontal, kind of running parallel to the river, which would if true, kind of give a little bit more room for that landing to kind of move up and down in this zone over the years. But again, that's conjecture, speculation. Like we don't know because we don't have a very good map to prove this. We don't have any map to prove kind of the language from that 1871 court case. And so it's hard to know whether or not, does that landing today sit in the exact same box that was kind of specified in that legal document from 155 years ago, right? And so that's kind of the challenge here is that when we talk about is the landing the same like location as it was, we're not talking about like is it generally the same. We're talking pretty precise in a pretty kind of specific box. So this is where it's like frustrating because if we look at the Maryland side, what you're looking on the left there is actually a map that was done by the property owner in the 1830s. And you can see there's I don't want to say that it's to scale. I'm sure it's not, but it's they've measured distances. It's far more precise than anything we see on the Virginia side. Um, and you can really see, I mean, if you look at kind of this small creek draining the Potomac, this over here is kind of the Maryland landing site. And then if you like transpose that over here, uh, it's quite accurate, right? I can say pretty conclusively that the Maryland side of the landing has not changed in these hundred and at least since the 1830s, right? We just unfortunately do not have the same level of fidelity on that Virginia side. And What's what is kind of cool is that there actually are a lot of really great maps that we have in our possession, a lot of them taken from the Library of Congress, showing this area in throughout, the 1800s leading up to the 1870s and then well after when that court case took place. The challenge that we have is just that again, we're lacking precision and scale to know, is it the same, right? When we look at this map, you can see it says Conrad's Ferry because again, this is from 1854. This is from before Elijah White had taken ownership of the ferry. And so it was named for Conrad Myers. On the right side, we've got the Maryland Landing. You can clearly see where the road goes straight to the water. You can see the C&O Canal kind of running up parallel to the river, just like it does today. But when we get to the Virginia side, I mean, even if there was a line showing the road coming to the water, it would be hard to know exactly where that was. But you can see we're not even seeing that here. Um, the one thing that we are seeing, and this is, I think, maybe the most likely opportunity for somebody to do more work on this, is the presence of warehouses on both sides of the river. So when this became more prevalent after Elijah White took over operations, but what he did was essentially build a number of warehouses on both sides of the ferry landings so that farmers could essentially bring their goods, bring their agricultural whatever, and actually store them in the warehouses for movement across the river or movement up and down the canal or out to Leesburg or whatever. And so what you had over time is a bunch of warehouses kind of spring up on both ends. And obviously, you want those warehouses to be as close to the landings as possible because you want to make it as easy as possible to unload and load and get them in and out and get them across the river. So I think perhaps the warehouse locations would be the most telling on the Virginia side to let us know where that Virginia landing was back then. Of course, there is at least none that I can find, effectively zero signs of old warehouses on the Virginia side, whereas there are signs of it on the Maryland side. And I'm driven over there and looked around, and I don't know. It's very hard to find. Here's the 1862 map. So again, prior, this is obviously during the Civil War, but prior to Elijah White taking over, you can see kind of the Conrad's Ferry location coming in. You can see the islands. If you go down to White's Ferry and you look to your left down the river, you'll see both of these, this small island and this larger one down here. But then on the Maryland side again, we've got these roads coming up. This road here is no longer there, but the road out here to where the landing would have been is the road that you've probably all traversed if you've been over the ferry in the past. That's that road on the Virginia side. And just to like make it, I find this like even kind of more frustrating is if you, this is the exact same map as this one, and this is just a few miles downshore at Edwards Ferry, right? Which is, has not been an actual ferry for a long, long time. But on this map from 1862, not only on the Virginia side do they show the road coming up to the shoreline, they literally show the path of where the ferry was. And so, again, I think we would still, like, if we really had to pinpoint this location of where this road meets the water, it would still be a little bit challenging. These maps are not completely to scale, and there would be some complexity there, but it at least gives us a much better sense of the locations of these landings. Whereas, again, just north of here, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, the map maker here, the cartographer, did not show that crossing point or that landing site on the Virginia side. And then here in 63, we do get the road coming to the river, but I mean, probably fairly obvious just looking at this, this is not exactly it's going to be very hard to determine within, that 16-foot by 445-foot box of where this is hitting the river. So it's just kind of an issue of precision here that our maps back in that time just largely weren't drawn to that level of precision, making it very, very hard to confirm or deny kind of that specific Virginia landing site. Yeah, and then just a final one just to kind of pound the point home. But this is 1879. And now, it's White's Ferry because it's after the war and Elijah White has purchased the ferry. You can see his name here, and then you can see he's building up these warehouses along that landing side. Um, for those goods. And I know that on the Virginia side, this map is focused on Maryland, so we don't see it, but on the Virginia side, he was doing the same thing. And so this again kind of is why I say like if you could uncover, like I don't know if it require archaeology or what, but if you could uncover warehouse locations on this side, I think you would probably be able to get closer to an understanding of specifically where the Virginia landing was. The other thing that I looked at was LiDAR. And this essentially is, well, I don't even want to try to describe it because I will just get it wrong, but it allows you to kind of see disturbances in Earth from elevation. And so it can be, useful in kind of spotting old structures. Sometimes I'll look at this for places like if you're familiar with like McKee-Beshers, which is out just kind of south of Poolsville. It's just kind of all woodland now. There used to be a lot of farms on those properties. And if you look at it on LiDAR, you can actually see just like little boxes that are now out in the middle of nowhere in the woods. But it kind of is showing that disturbance in earth from where a home used to be standing. And so kind of spend some time looking through LiDAR images just in hopes that you would be able to like spot maybe specific spots on the ground around the Virginia landing site to identify, yeah, have there been changes? Have there been disturbances to show those warehouses or anything like that? I don't really see that when I look at this. There is speculation that, or there's people have said that the Virginia landing side was further north in the past. I mean, the only spot that like kind of looks like something similar is up here. Um, but that strikes me as like way too far north relative to the Maryland side. So I don't think that's the case. When we look in here, it's very rocky. It would be a hard spot to land. I mean, this spot just kind of makes sense. But again, that's not good enough for court. What you can see is you can actually see kind of the road coming through here to the landing. And then there's the road up here that kind of goes out to Route 15. So it's I'm not learning anything new from this that wasn't already clear. But again, I'm not a trained expert on this, so perhaps somebody with more experience looking at LiDAR imagery would be able to spot something in this that I just cannot. And then if we look at just topography maps to show the different elevation changes, I, I don't think there's anything conclusive here. I think this shows clearly like why the landing is here, but I think a lot of this cut is man-made. We largely kind of stripped that land out to make that landing. So I'm not sure that this was like a natural feature, and that's why they chose the landing as much as it is. Just when you've got cars coming up and down that hill there on the Virginia side for hundreds of years and decades, horses before the cars, it's gonna show that depression. This is from 1921. I just think this is a really cool picture. What I wanted to show though was one of the things that I think is kind of cool to look at is some of the Montgomery County actually has some really good mapping imagery so that you can look and see things through time. I spent a lot, like way more time than I should on this site. But so what's kind of cool that we can do is we can look at White's Ferry from a bunch of different viewpoints and different times. So um, if we this is overhead of White's Ferry in 2025, so last year. And you can see on this side what it looks like today. But what's nice about this mapping is we can start to kind of go back in time and look at how, things have potentially changed. And my hope in doing this initially was that I wasn't sure if maybe some of, if you think about like Edwards Ferry further south, there's that old kind of, it's like ruins now, but it's like an old warehouse building. You kind of have a similar thing if you go up to the Monocacy Aqueduct. And I was hoping that there'd be some evidence of those warehouses on the Virginia side going back, into like the 50s. Um, the problem is we just quickly get to this point where it's just very, very hard to conclusively make out much of anything. Um, and so, here's 1979. So, you know, I don't, there's nothing there that like speaks to me that obviously this is the same landing in the 70s, but we needed 100 years prior to this. And so as you look through the maps over time, um, it's cool to see the changing landscape. I don't see the Virginia side moving at all. I mean, you can even kind of see, it's kind of cool. You can even see kind of just where the ferry has kind of worn some kind of, over time. I don't know. There's like a clear mark in the surface of the river showing kind of that crossing point. I'm also kind of curious if this is one of those old kind of Native Americans had kind of those like stone structures in a lot of places along the Potomac and some of our creeks to catch fish. There are a lot of them in the area, so I don't know if that's what this is under the surface. But just you can see really interesting things with good imagery over time. Um, so again, um, my hope is that somebody else is able to kind of build upon this work that's been done. And a lot of other people have done a lot of work, to be clear. I'm just building on the stuff that they've done. But it would be great if somebody could spend some time who has expertise in this to figure out, has this Virginia side moved? I would also, though, be clear that I think even proving conclusively that the Virginia landing has remained the same since, 1871, I still think that there are some other legal hurdles that would have to be overcome to have a case in court. And, so I'm not sure that we're in a place where this is something that would lead to the ferry being reopened, but I do just think from just a pure kind of historical interest standpoint, it is kind of fascinating to think about. Um, and so welcome others to kind of jump into that and see what you can figure out yourselves. But there are a lot of great resources out there to use. It's just getting to that level of precision 155 years back is really, really tough. And so that's kind of where it stands today. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, thoughts, comments like that, and walk through any of this with anyone.
Kenny, this is Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Question for you regarding eminent domain.
Yeah,
Um, there are lots of reasons for why a public entity can do eminent domain, um, as long as there's a public purpose to it. And
yeah,
some entities will use it for economic development if it can enhance the tax base and thus show a public purpose. But there was a legal case, Kello, that kind of threw a monkey wrench into using it for economic development. It gets kind of dicey.
yeah,
Why would Loudoun County n not want to jump in with economic development when it would bring so many more customers to their economic base? It would help with their transportation corridor. And me, as one who flies quite a bit, I find it more convenient to fly out of DCA
yeah.
than go all the way around to Dulles, even though I can practice, well, even though Dulles flies right over my
I know, I
head
know.
most nights.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it's a on the eminent domain piece, it's a good point. I know that that has been an issue that has, repeatedly come up, and it's um I don't know what the latest kind of from the Loudoun County commissioners are on that. I think that they've been leery of getting too involved in the kind of dispute. But I agree with you. I mean, I think that's been kind of a lot what a lot of people have claimed since the beginning is that perhaps this is grounds for that.
Mhm.
But for, an array of reasons, they've chosen not to kind of take that route. And so, we kind of sit at this impasse right now. So, yeah. Let me see. Looks like I've got a question. Oh, Janet asked, did Elijah White own property in Virginia? Yeah, he did. After the war, he married into, I want to say it was the Ball family, who was, well, wealthy. And I think if you think about the Battle of Ball's Bluff, which was just south of White's Ferry, Ball's Bluff was named after the Ball family. And he had, um, my understanding is a pretty large home over there. I'm actually that's one of the things I've been thinking about. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but is trying to figure out if that home is still standing and which one it is. There's a bunch of pretty interesting old homes right across the river, kind of upstream a little bit. Um, but yeah, he owned property over there. I think he was involved in banking over there. I think he was involved in like maybe some aspect of like law enforcement over there. I think Elijah White is buried in Leesburg. So yeah, he after the war, even though grew up in Poolesville on the Maryland side, kind of spent the remainder of his time or most of his time after the war on the Virginia side.
He owned a great big farm at White's Ford.
Oh,
Um,
White's Ford. Is it still there, Jim?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
park.
Oh, okay. Is that like is
I
it
changed the name of it because it was anti-Confederate
okay. Uh,
going on over there.
is it Moravian Park?
No, it's
That
Indian,
might yeah, I'll look it up. I know exactly what you're talking about.
right at White's Ford. That's where White's Ford gets his name, is from him.
Right,
And his
right.
first wife was a Gott girl from Mount Carmel.
Yep. Okay.
So,
Interesting.
and
Hmm.
he bought that farm before the war because you're going out to Kansas and Missouri, bought in that little thing.
Yep.
And got fed up with it and came back and started farming. And after the war, he was the first sheriff.
Sure, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah.
then he kind of bought the ferries, White's Ferry and Edwards Ferry, Sycamore Landing. He and Dr. Wooten bought all that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Very interesting individual.
I'm looking at a map you don't have.
Okay.
It's the Intercoastal Defense map made by the United States Army in 1864.
Hmm.
And it shows the Maryland side really good. And it shows the ferry path going like all the other ones until it gets to the Virginia shore and it stops. But it's a little higher up than the landing's probably another 15, 20 feet up river from where it's at now.
Yeah.
I thought
Okay.
I thought that road that went along the river on the Virginia side went to Gore. You
Um,
know where Gore is? It's a little uh, clapboard Episcopalian church on Route 15.
oh,
There's
I don't know that.
a lot of the local farmers in Virginia came from there and came over here and were farming the Maryland side of the river.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. I haven't seen that.
I got several relatives that came from there.
Huh. Yeah, I'll give that a look. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like that was a common thing is to not have this Maryland side, unfortunately, or the Virginia side drawn too clearly.
I wonder if the C&O Canal might have some maps of it because they were thinking about putting the canal on the Virginia side.
Right, right.
So they might have done a little bit of surveying.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Yep.
Virginia is a whole different mindset. So
True.
it's mine until you take it away.
That's right. That's right. Anyone else? Oh, there are some in the chats. Okay. Yeah, Diane asked about construction records on C&O Canal. Um, yeah, that's possible. That's a good place to look. And then Elijah White have a connection with an early home on Mount Nebo Road. Um, so Brian, you asked that. So I presume you're talking about Mount Nebo, which is the home that the road is named for out there. Um,
Yes.
That, that's his sister's place.
sister, yeah, because that was the White's family, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She married a white.
right. Yeah, that property has interesting stories from during the Civil War with a lot of Union troops. That's the property where Jim helped me out. It became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but he was part of the Massachusetts unit. But
Oliver Wendell Holmes.
yes, thank you. Oliver Wendell Holmes spent time on that property.
That Yankee.
That's right.
Oh, oh. I don't have any maps of Virginia side. It's like
Hmm. Yeah.
I show things, you know.
Yep. Yep.
People don't want you to know where their stills are at.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Cool. Well,
What
uh,
have you been doing?
what have I been doing?
Yeah, we haven't seen you in
I know, I know. It's been yeah, so everybody if you're looking for where I've been, no, I have a day job and I was working for the government until May of last year and then joined a startup that's working basically selling AI to uh Department of War and the intelligence community, which has been really interesting, but also very, very busy. And so it's just been kind of a crazy schedule, but I'm really excited to get back to doing these this year and trying to put more stuff out on like the Facebook page and stuff like that. So
Well, at least you're still alive.
I'm still here. We're all still here.
And we're very happy about that, Kenny.
I am too.
Kenny, thank you so much. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate this. I tell you, your visuals with the information are stunning. It brings home a lot of
Good.
messages with that. Thank you so
Good.
much.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's great to be with you all and look forward to the next one.
Thank you very much, Kenny.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Bye.
Uh,
Thanks, Ken.